Hello, welcome to Books the Biz, a podcast that looks at both the financial and operational sides of success. Please welcome our hosts, Dan Paulson and Richard Veltre. Dan is the CEO of Envision Development International, and he works with leaders to increase sales and profits through great cultures with solid operations. Rich is CEO of the Veltre Group and a financial strategist working with companies to manage their money more effectively. Now on to the podcast.
Hello and welcome to Books the Biz. We are back for another exciting episode. And as you can probably tell, the guest that's with me doesn't look anything like Rich. Do you, Matt?
No, I don't. But that lady there is much better looking than both of us.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's our AI Alice who gives us the introductions there. Matt Goosey, thanks for joining us. So we had a little bit of change in plans here. So Rich he might join us later on, but apparently the power has gone out at his house. So he is sitting in the dark. He doesn't even know what we're doing. So we can talk smack about him if you want, Matt, and you'll find out later when he listens to the show. But either way, I wanted to welcome you back on. I think we had you on about 2 or 3 months ago. And one of the things that you kind of hinted at is that you were busy finishing up on a book. And given our subject matter today, I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit more about your book now that it's done. It is launched. So why don't you share with us a little bit about the book? Maybe give us, just for those who might not have seen the previous episode, a little bit of your background and why you wrote the book, and then explain a little bit more about what the book's about.
Yeah, well, I'm Matt Goosey. I've been doing this for about 40 years now, 39 in the machining industry. What we do here, we do a lot of machine a lot of precision parts in different industries, really cool stuff. And throughout my journey, I kept in my head, maybe someday I should write a book because I have a lot of failures, and I don't want people to try to make the same failures I have, and the more they can learn from them, and that's really kind of why I've done it. As far as me personally, I grew up here in Augusta, Wisconsin. Kind of were raised on a farm, and then we moved into town. And of course, when I moved to town, I wanted a job. My dad worked at a machine shop, and actually our existing building, as you'll learn if you read the book. And I started sweeping the floors, and that's how I got introduced into manufacturing. I love, making cool things. I always loved art and math. And like I said, I always had this teacher in school that kind of told me that I was going to be a loser, and I didn't have a much bright future, and you better just go take this technical ed degree, tech ed stuff, because that's all you have. The funny story about that is that we finally met up again this summer. We took a picture together. We were all good. And he exactly what I knew he was going to say. I did that because I seen hope, and I seen a skill in you. And if I didn't do that, I figured you were going to go down the wrong path. So I thanked him. We hugged, and we're all good. So, but no, I wrote the book just basically towards the end of I told some stories, but really all my failures, and hopefully people learn from it.
And, so what are you hoping are some of the biggest takeaways from the stories you tell? And we talked a little bit about the stories last time, but maybe you can kind of give some highlights, since this is a new episode, new audience, and we don't know if they saw the last one. But if there were top 3 things that you would say, this is why I want you to get out of reading this, what would you tell people?
Use a mentor. First of all, find people to help you out, and if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. So those are probably the 3 big things. And listen to people that tell you no, and don't use it on your will. Use it for I'm a little more of a faith. It's a little bit more of a faith-based book.
Okay.
And you'll get that. I do quote Bible verses in there. I'm not good or bad. It's not trying to be, but use that as your guide path instead of trying to do it on your own. That's the big thing about the book. But it's got a lot of what people have told me so far. It's new. They say 1 minute they're laughing and the next minute they're crying. So it's got some emotionals through it as you read it, but it ends in success stories usually. But I just, like I said, the main reason is I want people to learn from my failures. And a lot of these failures I talk about, and I don't think a lot of people talk about.
Yep.
They're ashamed of them. They're bashful of them. I don't, but I don't want to be that person. So it was hard to write it and hard to tell it. So
Yep. Well, I can definitely feel your pain on that. We were talking before the show, and I was kind of telling you about my little medical incident that happened back in May. And for as much as both Rich and I have been preaching about how you need to set yourself up for, your eventual removal from your business, I'll say, whether it's retirement or whether it's something else, there's a lot of people that depend on you, and that is one thing I learned about my own episode in that is that for as much as I thought we had in place, we didn't have enough. And basically spent the month of June, A, in recovery, and B, figuring out how to make sure that what happened never happens to the extent where it impacts anybody else again. Um, and I agree with you. We don't talk about our failures enough. And what I tell people is failures are where you learn. If you're successful 100% of the time, either you're lying or you didn't try hard enough. So the fact that you are willing to kind of talk about mistakes you made, things you learned, how to hopefully help somebody else prevent those mistakes, I think are pretty powerful. So when we were setting up this episode, and that is also a mistake that I made because we had talked about getting together, and then of course my brain is still kind of on soft reboot. So every now and again, short term things kick out, and I forget about them. And so we set up this topic, which actually aligns very well with you anyway. Is Rich had seen basically a rant from another CPA online where he was talking about how business owners don't look at their business beyond kind of the day-to-day stuff. They don't structure their business for continuity or for ongoing growth or for being able to sell. And given that you actually took over your parents' company, I think it would be interesting to kind of learn a little bit more about what that process was like, and then we can kind of go back and forth on, are other companies really out there set up to succeed, or are they set up to more or less feed that owner's income and really not structured beyond that? So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background taking over MRS, and what were the steps that you guys put in place to make that happen?
okay, well, first of all, you get the book. In the back of it, there's 41 quotes that you'll learn from. So fail means first attempt in learning.
Yep.
So naturally, I kind of set our succession plan up. It just kind of naturally flowed from my failures. I guess my first one was back in '96 when, we were only in business really 10 years. I got in a cycling accident and hit by a drunk driver. So I was out of here for a little bit. But at that time, my dad was still running it. So we were kind of dueling it. So it wasn't so bad. And then the biggest one, and the one that still hurts today, is back in when my dad passed away in 2013. You can be prepared for that, but it's when it hits, and I thought we were prepared, but I wasn't prepared, and I literally didn't walk in here for like 3 months. But what? So that part of that was part of a little bit of the succession plan, because people ran the company. Everybody stepped up, and the people were here for me, and they got me through it, and that's one of the reasons why I give 40% of the profit back to the people because of that. And so naturally, hey, this place can run without Matt. And actually, maybe nowadays it runs better when I'm not here. And then through the process of that, I had a kind of what we call it is, I'll call him Ryan in my book. It's kind of I hired a consultant, and that didn't go very well. So you'll read about that. But before that, when I bought my mom out, my dad passed away. My mom's like, I don't want that stress of MRS. Get it off my plate. So I go to my bank, and of course it's a new banker, and she just starts handing us over money and like, yep, you're good. So I didn't get an evaluation on the business. She just shot out a number one day, and I said, okay, that's the number we're going with. Shame on me, and shame on her. And so the bank naturally gave us the money. Well, all of a sudden, after I gave her the money, I'm like, well, how am I going to pay for that? When you buy a machine, it's easy. You buy something, you do something, you look for the ROI, you look for the return on your investment. Well, I didn't do that. So now I got this debt cloud hanging over MRS that, how am I going to pay for that? So that's when the consulting came in, and that's when it really went bad. So, but on the backside of that, I hired a great CFO. My bank actually gave me a CFO, and so that was my start of my succession planning. You know, you always got to be prepared, and not just like a lot of our customers. I tell them, don't just single source all your parts, especially if it's a long run. It's going to be a future product. Dual source it, because we got this thing in Wisconsin, in the world, a country called a natural disaster, and I think that's maybe what Rich going through today. So you
Yeah.
always better have a backup plan. Have a back. So we always have backup plans, but now we're in the succession plan. You got to know your numbers, because if you
Yep.
don't know them, if you can't manage it, you can't measure it. So you got to hire professional people to help you out, and don't try doing it yourself. Like I tried to do it a few times. So my CFO does that all for me. And we look at I have a very young workforce. So if I do nothing, I got 20 years of growth. But eventually, it's gonna have to do something. And I have a son here in my business, but you got to start on early. You just can't. Doesn't happen overnight. You think you just want to exit your business, and there's so many. You're right. There's so many companies. There's people, businesses I talk to. I had a friend of mine who had a shop and over east of here. He just calls me up one day and says, "Hey, you want to buy some equipment?" I'm like, "Why are you getting rid of it?" "I'm just closing my doors." I go, "Well,
Mhm.
why don't you try to sell it?" "No, I don't want to go through that process. That's too much stress." And he literally just auctioned everything off or sold everything off. And I go, what are you gonna do about your customers? "Oh, here's my customer list." I go, his name was I won't I mean his name is Greg. "Greg, that's got some value to it. I want to pay you for that." "No, I just want you to take care of them." So that's the wrong way to do it. Um,
Right.
and there's
Well,
ways.
one of the things that we experience, so I've been looking up data on this, there's going to be about $10 trillion in equity that's going to exchange hands in about the next decade. 78% of those businesses are not prepared for it. So they're going to do something similar to what you just brought up, what Greg did. They're just
Yep.
going to close their doors, they're going to give away their stuff, and that's going to be it. But I find, and I don't know your experience on this. I find a lot of people out there that are counting on the sale of that business to be part of their retirement. So whether their kids take it over or whether they sell it outright or whether it goes to private equity, they're counting on a chunk of money that is going to help fund the rest of their retirement beyond what they already have saved up. And what I keep finding time and time again is they're just not prepared to maximize the sale of that business. They're going to sell kind of like your buddy Greg did. They're going to sell for parts or they're going to sell at pennies on the dollar because they're just not prepared to turn that business over the way it should be.
Yep. And another thing you got to do is you got to take money out of your business and put it in another separate account. And
Hmm.
most people don't do that. They just keep reinvesting. So that's what my CFO did 10 years ago. "Hey, we got to get money out of your business and put it in a separate account for your retirement someday." That's another thing that you should have done, because just say something did happen to go south, or go
Right.
really bad, you can sell all your stuff, but still you built equity outside of your investments. And um, that's something you should consider too. I'm just don't, if someone tells me their retirement's built on their business, I just get cringe. I'll be honest. I was thinking the same thing at one time. So that's why I said I hired somebody smarter than me to tell me to do it the right
Yep.
way, and not
No,
the wrong.
actually, I was talking with another client earlier this week, actually, about the same issue. You know, he keeps reinvesting in the business. He's doing it in part to lower his taxes. So he's buying new equipment, he's buying new trucks to again try to get that tax burden down. But he said the exact same thing you did. I'm reinvesting in my business because this is my retirement, and now he's starting to look at things a little bit differently and trying to figure out what those next steps are going to be. So I appreciate that advice because yeah, a lot of companies don't do that.
Yep. Yep. So and then another word that's been kicked around a lot is ESOP. I
Hmm.
we actually, me and my dad looked at that for the last 25 years. And I'm the kind of guy that's got, okay, we looked into it, and I looked into it. So I'm the kind of guy, and then I tell people when they leave here, or if they're going to go do something else, write down all the positives and write down all the negatives.
Yep.
And if that's unbalanced, then you got some more, then you got your answers right there in front of you. But if it's equal, well, then you got to dig a little deeper. Then you start talking to people. And I always say, if everybody that you're talking to are saying no, it's probably not the right thing to do. If everybody's saying yes, it's the right, go for it.
Yep.
So, but no, write down all the positives and then disadvantages, and we've done that. And I think we came up with 22 things, and 20 were nope, and 2 were yes. So
Mm.
that's pretty obvious. No, we're not going ESOP.
What was the biggest holdback on ESOP? Because I want to talk about that a little bit more, because I am hearing a lot more about ESOPs, and actually talking with a company that did do an ESOP a couple years ago, and now they're kind of in the stages where the original owner is stepping back and the employees are taking over, and they're running into some challenges with that. So what were some of the issues that you observed when you were doing the research on it?
Well, I'm no expert, Bob. I mean, I'm no expert,
Yeah.
but no, exactly what you said. Okay, so I'm going to go ESOP, and I'm going to come out here and tell all my employees that, oh, by the way, you got to come up with an X amount of dollars, invest it back in them. And I'll admit, most of my people, we tell them here every month, save your money.
Yep.
And a lot of people, they bought homes. Some have bought homes, but some of them didn't save their money. So for them to invest back in here, they don't have it. And
Right.
Inflation's so high right now, and everybody has kids, and you're 40, 35, 40 years old, and Matt's telling me I got to invest in MRS. I got to come up with, it could be $10,000, $20,000. A lot of people don't have that. So
Right.
that scratched the line right there. And I would never want to put that financial burden on anybody here because of everything you've done to help me. But that was probably the biggest stepping stone for me not going ESOP. Of course, the tax advantages for on my end would have been probably better off. But
Yep.
now, and then when you invest in an ESOP company, so I tell our team, hey, you're investing in ESOP. Well, okay, they maybe own 30%. I still own 70%. And well, wait a minute, I own part of this. I got to say, well, no, you don't.
Yep.
That can get a little sensitive.
Yep.
And now your culture's kind of ruined. So that was another X. So those are some of the big ones.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, as you point out, for your perspective, for what you were doing, ESOP wasn't a right fit for you. Because I have talked to other companies, other business owners, where an ESOP actually helped them. Their growth shot up afterwards. But here's the thing they will say: this was a process. This wasn't an event. And I think most ESOPs are treated like an event where, hey, you now have ownership. And as you said, they think, well, if I'm an owner, then I heard this joke at one of the clients that says, well, if I'm an owner now, that means I get a company truck, right?
Yep.
And he's like, no, that's not how this works. So there's got to be an understanding of what ownership, especially ownership in an ESOP, actually means and how it benefits you. And I believe there's got to be a lot of that education up front, well before going into pulling that trigger. And I just see, for me, I see the compliance end of it. I see the communication end of it. I see a lot of prep work that has to be done if you're serious about making that happen so it's successful. But there's a lot of people that just jump in both feet thinking this is going to be the best thing in the world. And then because their employees don't understand how it's a value to them, it's kind of like what you pointed out. They think, well, I'm an owner now, I get say in what's going on. And no, you don't. You really don't in a lot of cases. And that doesn't come right away. That comes over a period of time because you got to, buy the original owner out. They still got to get paid for their part of it, which doesn't happen on day one. It usually happens on year 4 or 5, maybe year 10, depending upon how it's structured. So there's a lot of things going on there.
Yep, I had one of my good customers at that time, well, not that time, but quite a few years ago. He went just like ESOP overnight. He lost 30% of his team.
Yeah.
Because they were like, they had to put money in it. Wait a minute, screw this, I'm out of here, So, yeah, it's something you just don't do overnight. It takes, like you said, bring a consultant in, bring someone who's an expert in, bring your team in, talk about it with them, and if everybody's agreeing, the whole team's agreeing to it, and everybody's excited about it, well, maybe that's the route you should go. But you have to educate, everybody on it. And just don't.
Yep. And there are other ways to do. If you want to give people ownership or equity, there's other ways to do it too. So that, again, like you said, talk to somebody who's gone through that. Talk to somebody who's an expert. Have a CFO, for example, who might have dealt with different merger acquisition situations, and really kind of learn from them what might be the best approach for you. Because just because it sounds good for one company and they were really successful with it doesn't mean it's going to work as well for yours. So,
Yep.
Yeah, no, good advice. Good advice. What else would you tell people that are thinking about this? Because what we're seeing is again, we're getting to that point where there's going to be a lot of people that are trying to get out of the market, and that to me is that whole 80-20 rule. 80% aren't prepared for it. 20% are well off. The 20% are going to sell for more than their value. The other 80% are, if they sell at all, are going to sell for much less than their value. So what do you think is the next step in all that?
Well, if that's your dream or goal, I say if you have a dream, you got to share your dream. So my
Mm-hmm.
dream is okay. So for example, if my dream is to do that, I got to share with people so they can help me and educate me on it.
Yep.
Um, but you got to start now, and it takes about 3 to 5 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a really good subject, and I've heard several people. I guess, like I said, naturally, I flew in, fell
Right.
into a strategic plan. Yeah, start now, and don't think it's going to happen in 6 months.
Yeah.
It's 3 to 5 years. But hire a consultant, or better yet, maybe there's a peer group or two, and everybody's like me. I talk about it in my book about when I joined a peer group. That was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it costs money, but boy, on the backside, you save a lot of money on it. You don't realize that. The things I learned in the peer group 25 years ago, I still use today. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like getting an education.
So yeah, I think that's the value, because so many, and we're Wisconsinites, right? So Midwesterners tend to think, well, I can just do it myself. I'll just roll up my sleeves. I started this business myself. I'll figure it out. And sometimes we get ahead of ourselves, get over our skis a little bit too much, and we don't realize that we're probably biting off more than we can chew. And for example, you're in manufacturing. But I talk to people in the trade, same thing. Well, you were a plumber. You're still a really great plumber, but now you're leading 50 people, and you got a fleet of 10, 12 trucks running around. It's a different story than when you were just a guy in a truck going around doing jobs, and you don't realize that transition happens. Now the next transition is from that business owner to removing yourself from the business, where maybe you're the only one making all the decisions. You have other people to do the task, but you're the one pulling the strings and saying yes and saying no. And that's what I tend to see a lot, is these business owners still have a great deal of control in every decision that's made. And if they're not there to make the decisions, nothing happens. I mean, what do you see in your industry, especially with other manufacturers like yourself?
Yeah. So first of all, start documentation.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I learned through all this and the why I read naturally is trust. You got to
Mm.
start trusting people, and then you got to be kind of the mentor, so you can get away. If you don't trust people and you just think you can do it all, that's not the right thing. You have to get away from it and just start using that. That trust was the hardest thing for me.
Yeah.
I used to be, I used to be on the shop floor running a machine and trying to run a business. That's that I ended in a heart attack. That I ended in a psych ward. Or a whole lot of medication or alcohol. I guess I could.
Yeah.
Just you know, you got to start now, and
Yeah.
unless like one thing I always say here, everybody's like, well, you play the lottery, and one of the things I like to do, and I'd rather do, is I hand bonus checks out here twice a year. That's the best feeling in the world for me.
Yeah.
I'd rather do that, win the lottery, because the chances of winning the lottery are very slim. So,
Right.
but so that ain't going to happen. It's like, if you're just going to close your business, you're going to have a lot more regret just closing it than you are going to try to actually pass it on to somebody to fulfill your dream. Um, that's why another thing, is that's why I tell kids when they're young, just put money in the 401k, because the fastest way of becoming a millionaire, besides winning the lottery, is start dumping your money in your 401k when you're 18 or 20, because with time
Right.
you're 50 years old, you're going to have $1 million in there. So
Yeah.
just kind of like trying to.
And it's a lot easier when you're younger than when you're trying to play catch up when you're older, because that present value of money, and also compounding of interest. That's something that we don't teach our kids enough when they're young, how much it can impact their future when they're
And
going
then
up.
exactly. And another thing you're going to find out is that you think your business is worth millions of dollars just because you run it. You're going to be an eye opener. You got to look at it like, what I would do is flip the switch, pretend like you're going to buy your business, and
Right.
then start looking at it that way, and then that'll open your eyes up. It's like, well, I'm going to pay that. I'm going,
Yeah.
that's so think of it that way.
Yeah, we tell people the same thing, especially with business owners who are highly active in their business, that they're the biggest detriment to the sale of their company for the money they want to make out of it. Because when they leave, the new owners probably got to replace them with usually 2 to 3 people minimum. And
Yep.
and you know what these salaries are like. Well, to find somebody at that executive caliber, you're easily into the 6 figures. Now multiply that times 3, multiply that times benefits and everything else to get them on board. And
Yep.
all of a sudden that comes off the top. So that number that you're hoping for now is much lower because the new owners got to pay that person or
Yep.
those people to come in. So yeah, great points. Great points.
Yep.
Matt, thanks for coming in. What's the name of your book again, and where can people find it?
I actually got it right here. It's called MRS Machining: A Manufacturing Story by Matt Goosey. You can actually just go on Amazon and find it, and Google just go into books and just say Matt Goosey's book or MRS Machining Story, and you'll find it on there. That's probably the best route.
Awesome.
You can get an ebook or you can get the hard copies. That's your choice. So
excellent. Well, just by judging by some of the stories you're telling here, I think it's an important read. It definitely aligns with what we've been telling people for the past several years. Unfortunately, Rich couldn't make this episode, but right now he's just trying to figure out how to get the lights on.
Exactly.
All right. Well, great. And again, if you need beyond the book, if you need something else, if you need any quality machining done, MRS Machining, and where are you located again?
On Augusta, Wisconsin, Northwest Wisconsin.
All right. Good. Easy to find you. Good. Matt, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it. Love to learn about your book, and hopefully some people will check it out and read it.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Bob, take it away.
Want to boost your sales and profits, but need the talent to help you grow? XCXO is a one-of-a-kind platform to find skilled fractional executives to help develop your team into a high-performance powerhouse. Fractional leadership is a great choice when you consider the average executive-level candidate can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries, benefits, and incentives. XCXO finds you the executive and utilizes their talents to build your team's experience, all for a fraction of the cost of a full-time C-suite leader. Contact XCXO today to fill the gaps in your leadership team. Visit xcxo.net to learn more.